Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And if you have back pain in your kettlebell swing, well, this episode's for you because we're going to break down how we'd go about solving it. Step by step or quasi step by step? Well, we have a process.
We'll get close.
Yeah.
We'll get close.
We got a process. And we're going to use something we call the algorithm. And we got a lot here, so buckle in. If you have back pain or you think you might have back pain, pay attention, all right? First, we should be clear. We're not telling you medical advice. So we're assuming you are able to swing and that you don't have some weird protruding discs flying out of your spine or your skin or whatever. Right, Roger?
Yes. We're assuming that you are medically cleared to swing. We're doing a thought experiment, basically. We're assuming that you are one of our clients. We know you're medically cleared. We know you're good to go. You're just having some discomfort. And things, maybe you feel like your back is a little overworked, because an overworked back one day can lead to problems down the line, potentially. So this is what we're talking about. So if you have some big nasty stuff, don't just go and think, oh, I'm going to follow what these dum-dums say and I should be fine. You might be, but I wouldn't trust me.
And what exactly is big nasty stuff, Roger? I mean, I got to know. Maybe I got it. I hope not.
It's like Voldemort. It's we're not going to name it.
Okay, we won't name it. And can we say that yes, this is for the kettlebell swing, but you could essentially follow this process for nearly any hardstyle ballistic for the most part?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I think so. And again, what we're really doing is we're addressing technique problems. We're not addressing mobility problems, anatomy problem, or incompatibility of anatomy or any medical thing.
Because this is a podcast, you're not in front of us.
So if your problem is technique, which it often is, then it's usually a pretty simple fix. And what we want to do is show you the process that we use. We've talked about it before. We've talked about a lot of these things before, but we want this to be all in one place in one handy episode, so you can actually use this stuff as a diagnostic. And one thing that I don't want to forget to mention is, if this is important to you and you want to swing and you want to move well and you want to not be in pain, then record yourself. Take out your stupid little phone and record yourself. And if you won't take the time to record yourself, then
you're going to be in pain.
So this is all really, really easy to do. It doesn't require coaching. Some of the things you might find some restrictions and some things like that, and you want to reach out to us. And if you're not even sure, for this episode, what will you say if someone sends us a video of a swing for the first week after we upload this? We'll take a look.
Hell yeah.
We charge for that stuff. We really do. But if you send us a video within the first week of this airing, we will take a look at your swing and we will give you some direction.
That's right. And so we're going to use the algorithm. This is something like Roger said, we've talked about before. I'm going to give you the algorithm steps, and then we're going to go into each one. So we have the stance, we have the connection, we have the leg drive, we have a redirect, and we have a reconnection. So to start it off, and I think this is probably going to be the meatier part of it all, is the stance. And Roger, let's start with the stance. What do you mean the stance? I can stand here just fine. So am I good to swing? Tell me about it.
First, because there's always a first, there's always it depends. The algorithm, the framework of the algorithm, it's not necessarily the anatomy of the swing. It's not even all of the essential events. It is the problem-solving process that we use. And sometimes one thing is going to bleed into another, and there are going to be some fine distinctions between them. So just keep in mind that it's a framework, and the idea of an algorithm is that you have an order to solve problems in. This is how we look at the essential events or the essential moments in a swing, not the labels or the parts. We're not going to talk about the float and all of these things. We may mention some words that are about particular parts of a swing, but we're really looking at the order of events, the order of things that we are going to solve if they are problems. So if everything is problematic, then we're going to solve them in this order. And if you have a problem with your stance, then there's no way of guaranteeing that we can solve a problem with the leg drive or the reconnection. That's why we have it in the order. Your stance, and let's get into this. Your stance
Yeah, we're
isn't
in
just
it.
where you put your feet, okay?
Okay.
It's your posture through the entire swing. That's why this is going to be the meatier part of it. If your feet are not in the right position, then you may not be able to use proper leg drive. You may not be able to reconnect to the bell effectively. So that's why we start with stance. So it's where you put your feet in your posture throughout the lift, which presupposes you have the ability to move freely through the lift.
All right. So beyond the right place to stand, we're going to start with balance. So when you talk about balance, it's what is that? Center of mass over base of support.
By
Physics
definition,
degree. That's what's up right here.
so by definition, your center of mass is going to be over your base of support if you're balanced. And if you're doing a standing exercise, then you can ensure that your center of mass at the moment where at any moment during the swing is going to be over your base of support. Okay. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be inside of your body. Okay. There may be a scenario where you're leaning back with a really heavy bell and your center of mass is kind of floating somewhere between your body and the bell. But I'm giving you too much information and confusing you, so I'll stop that.
Yeah, stop that. But it does sound cool as hell.
So the idea is that everything is going to stay lined up over your feet. And we can tell if this is happening by your ability to move. Are you moving forward and back in a nice rhythmic way? And really looking at things like, are your feet flat? Can you maintain even foot pressure? If your knees are moving in and out excessively, some of this stuff is normal. You know, we hear about the dreaded valgus of knees collapsing. Not necessarily a problem unless it is excessive. There may be times when you want less of it or more of it, but the idea is you're looking at this element of balance from the perspective of extra motion. So the feet are lifting, the knees are moving in and out. Sometimes the head is bobbing up and down. That may not be a balance thing. Sometimes it's actually a tension thing. You may need to move your head in a different position in order to stay tight in the lift. But you want to look at things as evidence that your balance is disrupted. And you can usually see when someone is well balanced. You're also going to notice something we're going to talk about in a little more detail later. The ability to shift back into the swing. When you're going into the backswing in particular, you should be able to shift your butt back rather than just folding over. If you do not have the ability to shift back, then more than likely your weight is pushed too far forward onto your toes, and you don't have the ability to move back without falling. And if you, conversely, if you're so far back you're about to fall, you're also not balanced. So that's going to change when you have a bell in your hand. But basically, you're looking, are your feet flat, and is your movement wobbly or disrupted?
Yeah, and if you're wobbly or disrupted, it'll not be able to work through the rest of the algorithm. So that's why stance is first. And when you talk about getting the shift back, that all ultimately comes down, can you get down to the bottom of your swing? And now, Roger, you mentioned when we talked about this episode in prep, you have a 2-arm swing, a 1-arm swing, and a double bell swing. Can you elaborate more on where there might be some differences for folks on that, or is that even relevant in this stance portion?
It is relevant in the stance portion. What we're really talking about is just physical dimensions. There's something called anthropometry. So anthropometrics, really just about body dimensions. That's just a fancy way to say that. How big are you? How big is your stuff? So your physical dimensions are going to influence really there are a couple important triangles when you look at a 2-arm swing, for example. And you can look at the same thing with a 1-arm swing as well. You can also find that triangle, but there's a triangle if you're standing up at the top of your swing and you're using your pubic bone as the top point of a triangle, and then your heels at the bottom points. You can see a triangle up here. Okay. Now that triangle is even going to have a top and a bottom. Now there's a really kind of special zone in that triangle, which is the knee to the crotch, basically.
The triangle of love.
The triangle of love. So you want to keep the bell in that triangle. Now the question is, do you have the physical width in order to accommodate that bell? Now, maybe you're swinging just something gargantuan and you need to stand a little wider. Maybe you're standing wider than you need to. Maybe you're fine with a one arm swing and you can be a little narrower. Okay. And maybe with a two arm swing, you're a little wider. And with a double bell swing, you're going to need to be wider still because you've got to accommodate two different bells. But the top triangle that you can think about is, imagine yourself in the top of a swing and you're in that float position here. So one shoulder, each shoulder rather, is going to be the bottom point of the triangle, and they're going to converge to the handle. That's the top point of the triangle. So if you're looking specifically at, let's say, the hands up to the elbows, right? You're going to want to try to get at least that much of the arm triangle through the leg triangle. So your stance needs to accommodate that width. If you're standing too narrow, you're not going to be able to get everything through. But also, the wider you stand in many cases, the less efficient your force transfer is going to be. So with your stance, you really want to stand as narrow as you possibly can in most cases. Sometimes that can be thrown off a little bit. Let's say your shoulders are wider than your hips. That can be a bit of a problem. So, for me, my one arm swings are usually more comfortable than two because I don't have to get my arms, around my chest, or I don't have to worry about the width of my forearms going through my thighs. I can actually just take my thumb and point it down, and I've got a lot more room, and I can really get my arm along my body. We'll talk about that when we get to the connection though. So definitely some differences in between the different types of swings.
Yeah, and a general starting point you said is heels under armpits works for most people just as like a starting point, and then you make that adjustment.
Absolutely. We do not believe in the form absolutes. We're not going to tell you need to have the bell a foot in front of you or blah, blah, blah. Like that doesn't make sense. But we don't want to leave you hanging in the breeze. So you should have some starting points. And what I find is you want your heel to be, as close to underneath your hip as possible for efficient force transfer. And the extra width that you might have in your shoulders is often really happens with the musculature, how wide your delts are, things like that. Sometimes the chest really does widen at the top. But more than likely, you're going to have it's going to be a little more uniform from the hip all the way up to the armpit. So I like to start there. And if I need to turn out, even just turning the feet out gets you a little bit extra room. So you don't need to necessarily step wider. You might keep your feet right where they are, turn them out a little bit. We're not going to get into hip structure either, because that's going to be, well, maybe we'll do another.
That's another time.
It's a whole other can of worms. But maybe you just turn your feet out to give you a little bit more space. That's totally fine too. And then from that starting point, go wider if you need to. But again, we want to think as narrow as possible. So this is really about the trial and error. Don't be afraid to try 3 or 4 different stances and say, this feels better.
Yeah, you got to find what works for you. Now, there's 2 important parts to the stance, and that's hip flexion and hip extension. Let's start with hip flexion and moving down into that backswing. If you can't do this, what are we talking about here? What does it even look like to have good hip flexion?
So one of the things that I want to point out is that your mobility restrictions, we'll call them, your ability to move is encompassed under stance. Remember, it's your posture through the entire lift. And if you can't hit the top position, if you can't hit the bottom position, something's getting in the way, that is a stance problem, and that's where most of your mobility concerns are going to be. The primary things you're going to want to concern yourself with during the swing is, do your hips have the ability to move? And this will be influenced by your knees. So I really want to stress, if you feel like you're having too much, like you have too much tension in the hip, bend your knees, put some slack into the system, and you'll find that you can actually shift your hips back. You can shift your hips back better. You get your pelvis back more. Okay, that's definitely a thing. If you think about if you've ever done a deadlift versus a straight-legged deadlift. A conventional deadlift has more range of motion because you allow your knees to bend. So put some slack into the system. But let's say you're lying down on the ground. When you have both legs straight, okay, let's say you're just lying there, in a straight line. As you bring your knee towards your chest, that is hip flexion. Okay. So you want to make sure, and what I will often do is bring my knees out to the side and kind of replicate my swing stance while I'm on my back. Okay. Feet flat. And you want to get to the point where your torso is about 45-degree angle. You don't want to just get, you want to see if you can bring your, knee up with your knee bent to a little bit past 90. Usually does the trick. Perpendicular to the floor, maybe just above, and see if you can even get it all the way up to where it looks like it's within 45 degrees of your chest. You know, that should be enough for most people. That should give you a buffer. But if you can't bring your knee up without crazy deviation, so the knees, you know, if you go through this little experiment, your knee really wants to move way inside or outside, and it's not tracking in a straight line, or if you find that your spine is rounding underneath and you actually are moving rather than at the hip socket, you're moving through the pelvis, okay? That's a problem because your pelvis inserts into the spine. And if the pelvis is dumping forward and back, you're actually using the back in order to facilitate the swing, and that extra wear and tear can cause some problems, and that might be where your pain is, or fatigue, or whatever you want to call it. That might be where it's coming from. So you need to be able to hit the knee flexion. So let's see, can you get your if you were to flip your swing and do it from your back, do you have enough room? Forget about even degrees. Okay, take pictures, flip it however you need to flip it, but you want to see, can you get your knees up at the right width? Okay, they don't need to be straight up and down. Move them out wide where they would normally be, and see if you can get the knees up without the spine tucking under. Okay, you're going to look for the pelvis to dump, or you'll look for the low back to really flatten. When that happens, we don't want that. We want everything to stay still in the spine, but the hips everything is moving in the hips. One key point: a lot of people don't know where their hips are, and this is problematic. So if, you know, when you ask most people, I've been doing this a long time, and I ask people, where are your hips? And they put them, you know, in the kind of the cultural norm where you would say, oh, stand with your hands on your hips. And it's really at the top of your iliac crests. That is not where we move. So
that's my favorite vacation spot, by the way, the iliac crest.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful this time.
Yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful.
So that's the top of your pelvis. And if you look at that line, that is at the level of your spine. And if you think you move there, then guess what? You're probably going to move there. Okay. And yes, that is going to involve your spine. So an easy trick to find where the hip socket actually is: put your thumbs in your belly button and move your middle fingers down towards your junk. And your femurs insert into the pelvis at the bottom of the pelvis. These are the hip joints. This is where we want to move. If you're not sure, look it up. Google it. Okay. Don't be lazy.
Google it. Yeah. So, in fact, don't be lazy on any of this. Like, it may seem like a lot, but trust me, if you're having back issues, going through this process will help.
It will, and you'll get a lot out of it. So we also want to be able to extend fully, and that's going to often be manifest at the top of the swing. So if you can't stand up and you notice there's still a pretty big bend in the knee, or if there's a big arch in the back, or if you just never get to fully standing, then that's going to be an issue with hip extension. And assuming you build the mobility into that, maybe you find a way to loosen up the glutes, loosen up the hip flexors, and now you can stand in that position. A really easy thing to do is just practice deadlifts with two isometric holds, one at the bottom, one at the top. So when you finish your deadlift at the top, continue to push. You don't need to squeeze the glutes. You don't need to thrust the hips forward. Just make sure you keep standing until you get completely tall, top of the head toward the ceiling.
There you go.
That usually does the trick. One other thing that you should check, and we have links to a lot of these things, and you can find these exercises online, so I'm not really that worried about you being able to discover this stuff. But you should be able to do something like a single leg RDL, symmetrically for the most part on both sides. If you can't move into your left hip or your right hip, or if you can't move into them evenly, when you get into a bilateral stance, so a two-legged stance, as you move your hips forward and back, sometimes both, you're going to get rotation at the spine, which can cause some problems. Now, I've worked with this before. I've had coaches. I know coaches who do this. they'll just stand with your feet slightly off center. I don't recommend you try that unless you really know what it is you're dealing with. There are ways around this, but for do it at home, do it yourself purposes, find the mobility and make sure that your hips can travel backward and forward with a reasonable degree of symmetry.
All right, let's talk about shifting back rather than folding over. Just explain. Well, I guess it's essentially if you fold over, you're going to just have most of your body in front of you, and if you shift back, most of your body will be behind you. Is that right?
Yeah, and we can talk about this now, or it's also relevant in the backswing, but we can just get it over with now.
Let's get it over with now, just in case somebody decides not to listen further. Son of a bitch.
That's fair. They might already be bored. So if you're looking at the bottom of a backswing and you're looking at bringing your torso toward the ground, you can do that by just simply folding in place, and you can do that through the hips. You don't necessarily need to do it through your spine, but you can fold directly in place and your spine is going to come forward of your feet. Or you can actively shift back. Okay? Shifting back does a few things. One, it stretches the muscles, so you get a little bit of elastic recoil for your next swing. Two, it gets you closer to the muscles you really want to use to generate force. But third, it actually reduces the torque on your spine and it keeps you safer. So in order to feel this shift back, a really, really simple drill to use is to stand on the threshold in between two rooms. Bathrooms work really well because they have door jambs that you can hold on to. And think about stand with your feet right on that line, and then don't shift back, but fold forward. Okay. One, you're probably going to notice that you feel like your balance is compromised, that you're going to be falling onto your toes. That probably won't feel great. But go down to that roughly 45 degree position and then look around. What do you see? You're going to see a lot of the room in front of you, right? Now do the same thing, fold it into the same position, but do it as you shift back. And your directive is how do you get as much of your body into the room behind you as possible? And if you look around, like Jeremiah pointed out earlier, you're probably going to be looking at the door jamb next to you if you do this right, because you're going to have so much of your spine in the room behind you that your head's going to be right in line with the door. It's a safer position for you. And it's going to also mean that you have the required mobility in your hips if you're allowed to do that. And if you don't, grab onto the door jamb and crank back a few times. Work on that shift, and you notice your mobility will improve.
Yeah, just work into that groove. So for the stance, it's basically your posture throughout. So remember, it does begin with your balance, the right width with even foot pressure for your body. Can you get down to the bottom of your swing with both your two arm, your single arm, and your double bell, and you're adjusting your leg width probably accordingly for that, or how your arms sort of turn if it's single arm, and then making sure you have proper flexion and extension. And talking about that shift back will help you with that, and those isometric deadlifts at the top and at the bottom are going to be really great drills to kind of know that you're hitting all those checkpoints. And your ideal stance ultimately is where you can generate force from with, I guess, as narrow feet as possible and still get the bell to go through and have that perfect standing position. Right, Roger? What do you say?
Yes. Do we have a video of that rope drill that we do?
Yeah, we'll put the rope drill. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just see the rope drill. I'll link it there, and I'll put a link in the podcast description here if you're listening to this, and you can see the rope drill, which essentially you set up the kettlebell behind you. You run like a rope or a long
belt,
towel
whatever.
or belt, anything through the handle, and you're going to step forward into that backswing position, holding your arms sort of back between your legs, gripping the belt rope or whatever, and you're finding, can you create tension in that rope, right?
Sure. And what you're really doing is you're checking off really the first three steps of the algorithm. You're checking your stance, you are checking your connection, and you're checking your leg drive. Because one thing that people do sometimes neglect in their stance is they feel comfortable, but they can't generate force there. Or they don't realize hey, I need to shift back a little bit more, or I need to shift forward a little bit more. So it's not just about where you're comfortable, but it's about where you're strong.
Got it. All right. So that's stance. And, we could go on and on forever on stance. So that's pretty important. As you can see, it took up about 20 minutes of today's episode. So let's get into the next essential event, and that is the connection, the arm to the body, where your arms line up for your torso. And one great way we talk about doing this is with rehearsal. Roger, can you just kind of explain to people where their arms are in connection to their body, what that actually looks like, and how it can differ for other people? And I'm not just talking because your arms are at your shoulders, but actually touching your body. So go ahead and elaborate on that.
The idea of connection is you need to transfer force effectively from your feet where you're generating it all the way up to the kettlebell. And your spine is going to be a sturdy bridge to do that. But another important bridge is going to be those arms. And you want those arms laid along the torso, which is essentially where your spine is, right? So you want to minimize the space between your arms and your body. And you want as much of your arm as possible laid alongside them. That's going to be different for everybody. Different people are going to have different torso widths. So your shoulders, might be a little wider. Maybe some people who are really tall and thin can get a lot more of their arm connected to their body. So when they move the arm down into the position where just before you break back into the backswing, you want to feel what parts of your arm and how much of your arm you can make contact with. So one of the first things I like to think about is I don't think about elbows or anything else. I'm actually thinking about my armpits. Thinking about my armpits, I'm thinking about my tricep. And I'm lowering and I'm feeling, where does my upper arm make contact with my body? Can I get my elbow all the way down into that position? Once I get my elbow in place, I feel that against my body and I'm pulling the arms back. You're pulling the arms back throughout the entire swing until you're letting go. Okay, really, really important. The analogy that we often use is putting an arrow on a bowstring. And you need to keep the arrow on the string throughout the whole time you're taking the shot, or your arrow's not going to fly well. So this is what the connection piece is all about. We need to make sure, as we're going through this swing and we're dissecting it, we're figuring out where your problems might be. We need to make sure that the implement you're trying to move, which is your bell, is really integrated into your body well. Okay, so we want to make sure that you're pulling back the whole time, and we want to see how much of your arm you can make contact with. Now, me, I can get about a little bit below my elbow, and then that's it. I can't get all the way down to the wrist. Some people can, and they try to get the wrist in contact with the pelvis. If I do that, my shoulders dump forward. It compromises my stance, which is the first step of the algorithm. That's why we have this order of events. Okay, so we know if tilting my shoulders forward solves step 2 of the algorithm, well, it violates step 1. So I now I have a decision-making framework, and I say, okay, let's not do that. So let me just get my arms in contact with my body as much as I can. You're going to do it for a 1-arm swing. You're going to do it for a 2-arm swing. You're going to do it for a double bell swing. Whatever you're doing, it's not going to be the same necessarily. What you're going to do is just go through the movement really, really slowly. And
without a kettlebell, it should be
without a kettlebell.
Just all your body. You can do this at the office, so quit messing around at lunch.
So you can do this. You should do this without a kettlebell. You should do it slowly, and then as you move into your swing, things are going to change a little bit. Once you add motion, once you add load, it's going to change. But still, it'll give you a framework. For a lot of people who can only make contact with the elbow, they know once their elbows are on their torso or their forearm is on their torso, they say, this is like the magic. Some coaches will talk about these magic buttons that release the backswing. Right? This is what that is. You feel these touch points, and hey, it's time for me to break back into my swing. So it's a good use of your time there too. You do want to think about where your arm is relative. Is it on the side of your rib cage, or is it more in the front? And different people, again, if I'm doing a 2-arm swing, then I'm a lot more on the side of my rib cage. If I'm doing a 1-arm swing, I can move actually closer to the front and the middle. So you're going to play with that for each of your different swings. But just remember, one of the biggest problems that you're going to see, especially as it relates to back pain, is failure to connect properly to the bell. And as you brought up earlier, well, this actually is the hike too. Okay, this is you need to be able to lay the arms along the body in this position, and you need to hold the backswing. So again, this is adding on to the stance thing. Stance is your proper position. So you need to hold that. as you are now doing step 2 of the algorithm, which is bringing your arm alongside the body and making that contact.
Yeah, and with the hike, a good thing that I think could be helpful in the rehearsal aspect of it. So yeah, you're taking your time, you're marking those checkpoints like Roger says, is my armpit, now my tricep, my elbow, everything's going down. But if you're in the backswing, can you get back, have that balance, and can you hold that isometrically and then stand up, keeping those arms on the body nice and strong, again, pulling it back, the arrow and the bow connection sort of thing. That tension is relevant to that particularly because if you start to lose a connection and your arms drift away, then you're going to now probably move through the back because you're going to not be able to transfer the force appropriately. Your hips may rise, which then thus takes away force production, all these sorts of things. And these are things that I guarantee you, if you're having back problems and you start to look at your videos of your swings, these things are probably happening at some point somewhere or have and got you into this position. So think about that. The arm to body connection, Roger summed it up best. It's the transfer and absorption of the force that's generated from your legs, which moves the kettlebells. Duh. All right. Anything else on connection?
No, we're good. Just hold your position, stay tight, keep moving your arms back until you're standing. You can let go when it's time to let go, not before.
Yeah, and that's important. I don't know, did we even say that? Like you're just focusing on keeping your arms on your body all the way up, all the way
we
as
did,
much as
but
possible?
we can hit it harder because
let's hit it harder. That's important.
A lot of beginners, when they swing, a lot of swing errors are committed if you were to even diagram the motion and the way people think about it. One thing that I will do when people have back pain, okay, they say, oh, swings hurt my back. Okay, again, we make sure they're medically cleared. They are. Well, let me see. Go through a swing without a bell. Okay, I don't need you to put a bell in your hand. One of the things I watch is almost always I see the arms move first. Okay, it is a movement pattern. It's ingrained into them for their arms to lift, and the arrow is going to move up and forward, the motion of their arms. When in fact, we want that arrow to move down and back. Okay, I should see someone reach standing. They should be completely standing, and the arms should be pointing at the floor. And then and only then will the arms come up. So usually people who have back pain with swings, if it's a technique error, somehow have some sort of faulty conception about what the swing is and is not. And that is a very common thing for me to see. I start to see that there are timing issues and the arms are coming off the torso very.
Yeah, and that goes to we've talked about this, this is something that we've sort of discovered through the years, is you move your body and the bell just is along for the ride. If you start thinking about the bell in your hands and you're like Roger said, you're trying to get it to that end position, well, you're creating a problem, and then you're going to have to work through these steps. The next step in it is the leg drive. So this one's pretty important. There are a couple of things I'm gonna let you talk about them, Roger, as far as like what people think it is and what you actually, it's one simple thing you actually need to do to make a leg drive happen. And what is that, Roger?
Just stand up.
What? That's it? You mean it's
Just
not squeeze my glutes as hard as I can, thrust my hips forward and do everything I could do?
These are techniques that I will very seldom use. Doesn't mean I won't use them. It doesn't mean they're wrong. I just find them not to be terribly effective. I don't tell people to squeeze the glutes unless they need to, because people will sometimes overgrip. That gets into other issues, and I don't want to cause problems.
And we did discuss cheeks or whole a long time ago. All right.
We did.
Okay.
We're talking about cheeks, squeezing the cheeks. But anyway, but I don't hit that hard. What I do is I tell people to stand up because that's something they know how to do. Okay? Do what you do all day, every day. Just do it faster, do it harder. The leg drive is about moving the pelvis. And because the torso inserts into the pelvis, and because the arms are along the torso, and because the hands are at the end of the arms, and the hands are holding the kettlebell, when you stand up really fast and you keep your arms connected to your body, the bell swings once you hit the top. And that's all just dependent upon, making sure that you out-accelerate gravity, blah, blah, blah. But really, really important that this is not a complicated thing. But when we think about, what you were just saying about, hey, if we see your arms raising, there's going to be a problem. Well, one, there's going to be a problem because your arms are moving. You're creating distance between the bell and the spine. And when you do that and the bell is still heavy, and the bell is still heavy when it is moving slower up than gravity is moving down, you're going to create distance creates torque. Torque can create problems for the back. Or you are using your spine as an engine to the. Okay. And what we maintain is that you should use your legs. Is that the forceful active standing is the preferred way to get to the top of a swing while you're holding your arms against your body. And once you get there, the bell will move. And it really is that simple. Occasionally we'll need to address if people aren't standing up all the way. Maybe we'll say push the hips forward. I don't usually cue the feet. I'm not a big fan of, crush the ground or anything like that. Kettlebell swings are a good balance of tension and relaxation, and that can be a useful cue sometimes for powerlifting, but I don't find it particularly helpful for swings. So don't focus on the feet, don't focus on the hips, just stand up. And
Stand up.
if you're looking for evidence that you're not doing this right, again, this is about back pain, look at what moves first. And this is one thing that I work with, when I work with coaches and they say, hey, I've got a client who's having some stuff, this is going on, that's going on, and they want to get really specific about anatomy. It's like, hold on. When you film them, what moves first? If you see when they are, the leg drive should happen once the bell has been connected to your body. So let's say you've done that effectively, okay? And you're ready to stand up, that's when the leg drive begins. Once you've hit the back of the backswing or the back of the hike, you're standing up. If the first thing that I see is the head jerk up or the chest lift or the back arch or the hands come away from the body, then I know you have a problem. You're not driving your legs. And this is something that's really easy to overlook. I've mentioned this before. Me and Jeremiah had an argument about this. I was like,
No.
dude, you're not using your legs. He called me all kinds of names. He slapped me a few times. He broke some of my stuff. And then he looked at the video. He's like, oh yeah, you're right. So really great technique. Really experienced coach. You can't always feel these things, which is why I still film myself sometimes. So, sometimes you're not focused, you're not paying attention, and you're leading with the wrong thing. And when your arms are pulled back behind you, one of the first things I do if I feel my back is really get my arms pulled in. It's not going to let me use much else other than my legs. Pull your arms towards you, stand up fast. It's going to solve most of your problems.
Yeah, and that's a good, you alluded to something there, and I think I want to just point this out real quick, is that these are thinking exercises, or they're skills, right? They're things you develop. So that means it's not just stand there, bust through the reps, and now I can move on, check in the box. You will get better, and you'll be able to check the boxes faster and with more weight or more reps or more everything. Once you dial in that, it's super important to take your time and really get good at these sort of things, not letting the spine be the driver, not lifting that head first, not thinking about your hands, really getting these nuances. And at first, when Roger came up with this concept, it seemed like an oversimplification, but the reality is it is fundamentally sound. And as somebody with back pain in the past, I know that if I'm feeling it again, I need to work back through this algorithm. And where does it usually end up for me? It's going to be somewhere in the arm-body connection or that leg drive issue, right? And so just think about this as we go through this. And then if that's your leg drive, you're just standing up, you're holding those arms to your body, you're going to transfer the force. The bell's going to redirect, which is the next part of the algorithm. The redirect in the snatch and the clean is going to be something different, but in the swing, it's managing the arc. So what does that even mean, Roger? What's the redirect in the swing look like?
Well, the redirect is the point at which the bell separates from the body. It's when the ballistic part, or what causes the ballistic part, should have already happened. These things are largely going to happen. You're completely standing, whatever type of ballistic you're doing. So the redirect is when the bell begins to separate from your body. The separation from your body during a swing is far less sophisticated than it is during a clean or a snatch, right? but there still is a separation. There still is an arc. So if you look at the outline of a swing, it's going to draw a portion of a circle. That's what that arc is. Not too complicated, but you do have to manage it. If you just let your arms go and you don't remember that your arms are actually anchored to your body through the shoulders, then your bell is going to move. It's going to surge up and away. There may be a separation. There may be a momentary loss of control. That could be problematic. That could be something that's causing some back pain. So your arms are here. What you're really thinking about doing is just keeping the chest nice and wide. Okay. So that anchor is at the shoulders rather than in front of the shoulders. Okay. So there's something that we do for people that's usually really helpful. And that is to just interlink the thumbs and then pull the chest wide, and people can
Wu-Tang.
feel that. Yeah,
for the
Jeremiah
children.
calls it the Wu-Tang for the children.
And that's another piece of like rehearsal, right? This is something you can, in your rehearsal of a swing, there's opportunities for you to dial in what feels good and what it's supposed to feel like or look, or both, really.
Sure.
Yeah. So
So
that's that.
this is really simple. Just get your arms long in that float position. I even encourage people to reach them forward through the shoulder blades. Get the arms completely away from the torso as far as you can. Interlock the thumbs and then pull through. Think about pulling. Just pull your chest wide. We're not talking about shoulders. We're not talking about retraction through the scapula or anything like that. Just pull your chest wide, as though someone is pulling your shoulders and your chest as wide as possible. This is what we want.
Another, and that reminded me of something you told me, it's a while ago, but I use this one a lot too, is that, that sort of that Superman opening up your chest thing. You're tracing that collarbone. You have no choice but to get wide in the shoulders that way.
Sure.
And so you're going out.
Yeah, that's
and not,
just to
not
be
the
clear.
back.
That's Superman's taking off his suit. He's not
he's
Clark
not
Kent
burning
anymore.
laser holes in your face with his
No.
eyeballs.
He's hey, I'm getting ready.
Is Superman a stripper?
Maybe
I think he is. So we'll find out.
that'll be the next episode.
Yeah, is Superman a stripper? Next on Kettlebell Corner. All right, so that's the redirect on the swing, and then finally the last piece of the algorithm is the reconnection, and that's where the arms are going to integrate back to the body. This is a lot of patience. Roger, let's talk about like sort of the specifics of what the reconnection looks like and when is that process, so I guess, finished to where it becomes the next thing.
The reconnection, we've already covered it pretty much with the connection and the rehearsal. The difference is though, you're gonna connect a certain way, maybe down in the hike versus at the top from the float. The reconnection is going to start as soon as the bell starts to drop from the float. Okay, the float is that momentary weightlessness of the bell. It's going to hover there for a second. Your arms are going to start to come back down, and you should start to feel those arms reconnecting. You're going to feel maybe something going on in the armpit between the tricep and the rib cage. So your arms are coming back down along your body, and you want to wait, and then wait some more, and then wait some more. Another common problem that we get that can generate back pain is people are not waiting long enough to move into the backswing. And when the bell is in front of you and you are moving the hips away from the bell at a different rate, again, you are creating distance between your bell and the spine. And you do not want to do that during moments where the bell is heavy. Doesn't matter that it comes away at the top because the bell is weightless. Again, you've accelerated so much and the bell is accelerating so much that it is moving up faster than gravity could hold it down. So if you could somehow rig a magical scale to it, it would register 0. Okay? You're not gonna feel any weight at all. The only thing you may feel is the force of the bell maybe tugging away from you, but that's going to be a different thing entirely. It's not pulling you down. It's pulling you forward. So when the arms are integrating into the body, or when you're moving into a backswing, when you're moving to move the bell or to reconnect the bell, you do not want distance between the bell and the spine. You want to minimize that. So if your hips are moving back, but the bell is still dropping, it hasn't quite reached as far down as it can get, you're creating space, and in that space, bad things can happen. So we want to make sure that you're weighting as much as possible. That's why we have another drill. We call it the horny thighs drill. And you don't break
Yeah.
back until you feel the horns of the bell on the insides of your thighs. So we're waiting for that feeling. It gives you a tactile cue. It says, "Oh, hey, now's the time for me to break back." And once the bell is actually grazing your inner thighs, it's as close as it's going to get. So you don't need to worry about that distance. You're not worried about problems. So the backswing is when the arms are completely reconnecting, and then once that happens, you're going to go into that shift back that we talked about earlier. It's when you're trying to bring your butt into the room behind you. You're bending the knees, you're letting that backswing happen, and the reconnection is going to go all the way down. It's going to go all the way down until you hit the backswing, because you're going to want to maintain that until a moment that we call the turnaround. And the turnaround is really just when one swing ends and the next begins.
A
So
split second. Yeah.
yep, very, very quick. That reconnection should be maintained all the way to that moment. And really, this is us having worked through the entire algorithm with the swing for the most part. But the big things to watch out for in this last piece are your hips breaking back too soon. Sometimes you'll lose tension. That happens less. That usually happens as a result of people who are really not good enough at the leg drive yet. Once people have an effective leg drive, I don't really see that problem with this piece of the swing. It usually is just them not waiting long enough.
Yeah, you're in that sort of, for lack of a better term, that standing plank, being patient. And Lord knows we all need it right now more than ever. So this is a perfect time to practice it. Think of it as a moment of Zen. Can I wait? Can I wait some more? And can I keep waiting? And then bam, you're going to turn around. And right then and there, you're already arms connected to the body. You're in that same spot you were when you originally did that hike. And now you're back in the process. And then it's just leg drive, which is why, whenever I've had, like I said earlier in the episode, whenever I have problems, it's usually an arm to body connection or a leg drive issue. Usually an arm to body connection sort of thing first. Something's moving before it needs to. And then, okay, let's reel it back in. And,
But again, you have to work through the steps. Don't just assume it's one of those things, because you might have a shitty stance, and that stance is actually the impediment to a poor leg drive. Maybe your feet are
if you
too
can't
wide or
stand
too
all the
narrow.
way or whatever, even
Sure,
you can't
or if
get all the way
you're
up.
out of balance, and it doesn't matter how good or bad your leg drive is. If you don't have a good connection between your arm and your body, you're going to be less effective. So you want to work through all of these things in order, one by one. Check them off the list. Look at your video, figure it out, make sure one part is good, then move to the next. It really is that simple. The hard part about this that you may need help with the coach is usually the stance part. But once that's the how to work through mobility, blah blah. But you can find a lot of good resources on YouTube in order.
Yeah,
to help
namely
with
our channel.
mobility.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe right then and there. If you're listening to this, go to YouTube, and it's the Iron Revival. That's our channel. We have covered everything you heard here with visual demonstrations throughout our hundreds of videos that we have up there. So they are there for you to use, and we invite you to use them. And that's pretty much the algorithm. I don't want to go much more, Roger, because if you made it this far, kudos. Send us a video if this is the first week. And if it's not, we may say, hey, you're going to have to pay. But
we might first week that we've uploaded this, send us a video. We'll give you some forum feedback for sure.
All right. Anything else?
Nope. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Great.
If you do have questions, put them down in the comments. We can either reach out to you directly. I got an email from someone recently that was really cool. I like questions. I'm happy to answer them. Maybe we don't answer the question via email. Maybe we do an episode. Either way, ask us the questions you have.
Exactly. And if you're listening to this on every podcast platform, you can send us a text. There's a link right up next to the description. All right. That's enough trying to pander for feedback. Do it or don't do it. We're here for you. All right. Download the Bells app because it's where it's at. It's on the Apple App Store. And as always, stay strong.